Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to talk to you all about the Albuquerque Zoning Reforms, specifically the Integrated Development Ordinance, and how a lot of the good reforms have been slashed and what you can do about that so that we do have better zoning in Albuquerque. So if you're wondering, why does this matter? I'll tell you exactly why it matters. In the United States, a lot of our infrastructure is very much car-centric. As an example, our roads are 3 or 4 lanes in each direction solely dedicated to vehicular traffic. That equates to like 6 or maybe even 7 lanes total for car traffic. That's not acceptable. What we need to be doing is building more intelligently. Now, I'm not here to talk to you about roads or bike lanes or sidewalks or trains today, but instead I'm here to talk to you about zoning reform and how high you can build buildings and what kind of buildings you can build where. So to start things off, most residential zones in Albuquerque do not allow you to build higher than 26 feet. If you want to build a 3-story house in this city, you probably can't. As a full disclosure, I do serve as commissioner on the Environmental Planning Commission, and I was one of those that sat down for 8 hours on a Thursday in October to get this legislation through. And I'm not terribly happy with what my councilor in particular has done with these reforms. So hopefully, across the entire city of Albuquerque, this video will help inform my fellow Burqueños on what needs to be done so that we have a better city 3, 5, or even 10 years from now. Throughout this entire video, I'm going to be personifying the NIMBYisms as a character in flannel. So the first gutting of reforms involves reducing the allowable size of bodegas. Instead of building a corner grocery store up to 5,000 feet, you can now only build a grocery store up to 3,000 feet. Don't you love having the government tell you how big you can build a corner store?
I love it when the government tells me what I can and can't do on my own property.
Perhaps the biggest gutting of this reform occurred 2 nights ago on January the 28th. If you check the website, the short description is removed zoning conversions. What exactly does that mean? If you do some digging, which I've done the digging for you, you can see the graphics of how things would change in major transit corridors as well as activity centers. The basic gist of this reform says that all areas within a quarter mile of these major transit corridors will be upzoned. Additionally, areas near these activity centers will also be upzoned, allowing for more dense development. As an example, I live in a townhouse near one of these corridors, so I would have been upzoned, allowing me to build up to 42 feet instead of the 26 feet limit that I currently am under. If you want to get into the weeds, everything zoned R1 would go to RT, which means townhouse. Everything RT that's townhouse already would go to MXT or mixed use transition, and everything zoned as RML would be upzoned to MXL. So I've shown the charts. Now I'm going to show the graphics. So if you take a look along the major transit corridors, this reform would allow for greater density, which means taller buildings. In the United States, we're kind of at a crossroads. We can keep building out and force more people onto the roads and have more traffic jams.
I love pissing my life away sitting in traffic.
Or we can build up, which means either less people on the road because they're taking public transit, or if they do drive their cars, their commutes aren't nearly as long, so it's less people on the road because they're not having to drive as far to work, or to the grocery store, or to schools, or to anywhere, because the trips are shorter. But instead of building up, we're going to tell people you just have to buy a house on the west side, or in Rio Rancho, or in Bernalillo, or in Los Lunas. Why do we want to force people to sit in cars and waste their entire life? We can do better. The next major gutting of this reform involves disallowing townhouses and duplexes on R1 properties. Once again, why do we need the government telling us what we can and can't do on our own property? It seems a little ridiculous to me, but here we are. The next major blow to this reform involves bodegas and tiendas again. But this time, instead of stipulating that it has to be on a corner lot and you can't build larger than 3,000 square foot, it also stipulates that you cannot build it in any R1 residential area whatsoever, even if it is on a corner lot and less than 3,000 square feet. This makes no sense. In other countries, you can walk to a store and buy what you need and then walk home.
Walk? Why would I walk? Bubby, give me another one of them fried bacon and mayonnaise balls. I can feel my blood moving.
Personally, I would love to be able to walk down the street, buy what I need, and walk home. Literally any non-English speaking first world country has this, except for the US and Canada. Yeah, because car dependence, right? Amidst all my negativity and critiques, I also do want to point out some good reforms that were made by the Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee. First of all, the committee did open up the allowable community garden in more zones. I think that was a great move. Secondly, the ability to do composting was added back in. I was in favor of it when it was in the EPC stage, but it did not pass EPC. I was happy to see composting make its way back in at the LUPZ phase. And then the final change, which I did think was prudent, was a list of non-allowable uses on Main Street corridors, such as Central or 4th Street. I know I've given Councilor Grout a hard time this video, but this was a very prudent change. We do not need more car washes along Central. We do not need more storage units along Central. We don't need more nicotine retail. We don't need more devil's lettuce being sold on Central. Warehouses, salvage yard, outdoor vehicle storage. This is a waste of space on Central and 4th. While I recognize this is more restrictive, we need to be very prudent about how we use space on Central and 4th Street, known as those Main Street corridors. So, excellent change there. So there have been a lot of bad changes and a few good ones. As a citizen of Albuquerque, what can you do to ensure that the bad changes get thrown out and the good ones stick around? Well, we do live in a republic with free speech for a little while longer anyway. So what you can do is contact your counselor. In this case, I will be emailing Renee Grout. I'm sure she will not like to hear all that I have to say in the way of criticism, but I'm going to exercise my First Amendment rights.
Dear Councilor Grout, I'm writing you to humbly request that you reconsider some reforms that were made to the Integrated Development Ordinance while it was in the Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee. Specifically, 1, allowing bodegas up to 5,000 square feet to be built. 2, restoring the RL category to allow for townhouses and duplexes. 3, restoring the zoning conversions near major transit corridors and activity centers. 4, allowing bodegas to be constructed in R1 zones. The city planners have busted their asses, worked incredibly diligently to put together this last round of reforms. We owe it to them to do our best job to get them passed. Best wishes, Aaron Lewis.
If you've made it to the end of this video, I just want to tell you that I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that I've inspired you to participate in civic activity and make good decisions. I want the United States to be a place where we can walk places if we want to. Rather than having to get in a car to go to a grocery store to buy groceries, I prefer to walk to a bodega. Rather than forcing people to commute 45 minutes each way to get to work, I'd rather build denser cities. We have the ability to enact change, and it's on us to contact our representatives to make good decisions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.